All right, so here's another personal story. So years back, I lived in a house with a few guys that I worked with, and in this house was really wild for one, right? There's a lot of parties, there was a lot of drinking, drugs, that sort of thing too. But so because of that, this was actually not too long after I first became a Christian. So I kind of just stayed to myself. I stayed in my room a lot of the time, even though I liked these guys on a personal level. Whenever they would have these wild parties and stuff like that, I would stay in my room a lot of the time, right? And one of the guys that was there, he was just one of these guys that is just that everybody tends to flock to. I remember like everywhere we went, girls would just run to him. I mean, it was crazy. I'd never seen anything like it. Every time we went out anywhere or something like that too, girls would always be trying to talk to him. He's one of those guys that just kind of naturally had it. You know what I mean? Some guys just have it. They have the lingo. They know how to talk to women, and they just kind of have this aura, right? One of those guys that like he could have been an actor. He could have been anything he wanted to be. He got promoted really easy to all these different jobs. He would go golfing with the GM at a job all the time and stuff like that because he's just one of those guys that was very social and people really liked him, right? So at this point, I was kind of new to Christianity, but by no means was I some perfect Christian or anything like that. It wasn't like that. It was just that what these guys were doing was just too far for me, right? So one day I remember I was in the kitchen and I was eating, and this roommate came in, and he's starts kind of talking to me, and he was kind of upset because I was kind of killing the vibe, right? In the house and stuff like this, because he was trying to get me to hang out a lot and I didn't want to. And so I explained to him a little bit about Christianity. And at this point, I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I knew enough about it to make my commitment and that sort of thing too. But I started just kind of telling him about Christianity and stuff like this too. And he started getting more and more worked up during the conversation. I remember him saying at one point that he knows all about religion. He's like, I know all about religion. He's like, I went to a Catholic school for 13 years or something like that. I went to Catholic school for 13 years. I know all about religion. And then he said, you know what my religion is? My religion is doing nice things for people and making people happy. That's my religion. Right. And then I remember saying, and this is right when he was kind of at the peak of the conversation, when he was kind of about to storm out the room. And then I said, well, I hope that gets you into heaven. And that's what I said. But that's not what I wish I said, right? So pause the story right there, and then I'm going to get back to what happened right after that. But I thought about, like, now when I think about my friend, I think that if I mean, I know he thought about himself as a pretty decent and good guy, right? But if I pushed him and I asked if, he was perfect, of course, he'd probably say, I'm not perfect. That's something that most people would say, right? They're like, well, yeah, I'm not perfect, even though he thought he was a decent guy. But when we think about God, right, if God is perfectly good, it requires him to punish wrongdoings. It requires him to punish injustice. And the reason why, I mean, I think about this, I watched a video not too long ago, and I'll probably do a video on this video at some point, but the guy molested his little sister, and he said that when he molested his sister, he genuinely did not believe that it was wrong. He just didn't think it was wrong. He didn't feel like it was wrong, so it wasn't wrong. And I think that's kind of the issue, right? When people don't think that their wrongdoings require justice, or for God to punish them for anything that they've done, they think that, like, well, no, my intentions are good. I'm a pretty decent person, and my intentions are good, so therefore those other wrongs shouldn't count as good, right? But I think about this too, if like, even in marriage, right? If your spouse says or does something that hurts you, even when they apologize, there's still damage that's been done, right? Especially if a spouse has been unfaithful or something like that. Even if they apologize or something like that, there's still damage that's done, right? And you can't really get that. You can't really. There's consequences for the things we do. If I feel sorry because I murdered somebody, right? And I genuinely didn't believe it was wrong, but I murdered someone, that's not going to bring their life back, right? So it's kind of like that. And I think about, like, what if the judge let me off the hook just because I felt like what I was doing was right, even though in the eyes of the law it was not right. There has to be this kind of transcendent law, and that's the problem with morality based off of people's feelings. Is that some people may genuinely not feel like what they're doing is wrong, but it doesn't mean that they're not wrong. So if the judge just let me off the hook because I didn't feel like what I was doing was wrong, that judge would not be a good judge. It would not be a judge that's executing justice fairly and accurately, right? So anyways, it's like that with God, right? If God is perfectly good, then he can't just blink at the crimes, right? He has to punish the crimes. That's what would make him perfectly good and perfectly just. So anyways, when I think about like one of the biggest complaints with non-Christians, actually, the biggest complaint is that he allows people to do wrong things that hurt other people, right? That's one of the biggest things. And so I think people somewhat agree with this. Like, if God is good, he should be just, right? He should punish the wrong things that some people have done. But on Christianity, God is just, and this life is not all there is, right? So because God's perfectly just, he will punish each and every wrong in time, right? That's ever been done. If he just let things go, then he wouldn't be perfectly just. So I think you get the point. So, but people don't want just a just judge, right? They also want a merciful judge. Not just, they don't want him to just be 100% perfect in just justice. They also want him to be 100% in mercy, right? And this is what we only find in Christianity. In Christianity, it's the only place where we find perfect mercy that is also worked out in God, right? It's perfect mercy. I really think about that. He showed his mercy by taking on human flesh and becoming a man. And he came into this world. It was like coming into the courtroom and saying, hey, I'll pay for all their crimes. I'll take the punishment for all of their crimes, to all of the things that you've ever done. Now, your whole entire rap sheet, right? And this goes back as far as you go, right? Everything that you've done wrong, he says, I'll pay the price for that. For anybody that will just accept it, then I'll pay it, right? And that's 100% merciful. You can't get more merciful than that, because he's not just saying, I'll forgive some of your sins or something like this. He says, no, I'll pay your full debt. I'm not forgiving just some of the things you've done wrong. I'm forgiving everything that you've done wrong. That's perfect mercy. And so this is only found in Christianity, a God that loves us so much and so merciful that he actually comes into our world, humbles himself to be a servant, and just comes here humble and sacrifices his life. And, he got beat and humiliated and hung on a cross and brutally murdered for us, so that way he could pay for those crimes that we did against God. So it's not, and two, I want to emphasize that it's not that God just looks down on Christians and says, hey, I like them, I'm going to pick this group of people. It's not that at all. God looks down on humanity and sees humans. So a lot of people that identify as Christians and stuff like this, like, God only knows. This is why it says God judges their hearts, because some people may not. It's just because people say they're Christians doesn't mean they are Christians, or some people say they believe in Christianity, they may not, so only God knows this too. So it's not as though he has some favoritism towards Christians. It's not that. It's the whole point of him offering to save us all from drowning. And the people who respond and say, yes, I accept your free offer, then those are the people who will be saved on Christianity, right? So, so this is why Jesus was the only way. And that's what I think people don't seem to understand. When they hear Jesus was the only way, they're just like, oh, that's narrow-minded or something like that. But this is different. This explains why Jesus has to be the only way. It's like you can either accept him taking the penalty for your wrongdoings and all the things that you've done wrong in your life, or you can not. And you can try to be a perfect person on your own, but you're never going to make it. You can try to be hold up to your own standards and say, okay, I'm gonna be perfect, so that way God will have to let me into heaven. You're not gonna make it. And this was the problem with the Pharisees in the Bible too. So anyways, the last thing I want to say before I get back to talking about my friend, and then we'll close it out, is I'm glad that this isn't just a story. And I'm glad that this isn't just a story of blind trust, right? It's not like we're supposed to just, Jesus says, this is what's up, just trust me. I'm glad it's not like that. It's bigger than that. Why it's so amazing is that we have historical and good evidence and reasons to believe what Jesus said, for us to put our trust in Jesus and what he said. And that's what's so amazing to me about Christianity, because that also is unlike every other religion. There's so many things that's just unlike every other religion. Christianity invites you to test its claims. You know what I mean? And so you can test them, and you can, come to, I mean, this is the whole thing. Paul said, if Christ didn't really die and resurrect from the dead, then everything we're doing is just in vain. We're to be pitied, because we're still in our sins at that point, right? And so, there's a lot of passages in the Bible too where it's like, no, we didn't follow these clever myths or anything like that. We've seen these things with our eyes, and so that's what's so amazing about Christianity too, because if you compare it to every other religion in the world, the evidence for Christianity stands mountains above any other belief system. And so that's why I think that it's not even just blind trust, which makes it a very good story. And the best thing about the good story is that it's a true story, and it's something that we can actually verify, which is amazing, really, when you think about it. So every other religion says, I'm a prophet come to help you find God, or something like this. But in Christianity, God says, I'm God come to find you. Really think about that. It's just so beautiful. And it's not just a beautiful story. Well, what makes it even more beautiful is that it's a true story. So to get back to my friend, after that conversation, I think I moved out maybe about a month later. And after that, about a year after I moved out, or not even, maybe about 6 months after I moved out, we found out that he passed away. He was, I've heard conflicting stories. Some people say there weren't drugs in his system, but his heart just kind of gave out from all the, partying and stuff like that. But other people said he was on a whole bunch of stuff. Then I've heard another person say he was taking painkillers and drinking at the same time. But the whole thing, what's so heartbreaking about this is that I was in a position to talk with him, and I could have done a better job defending or at least giving him an example of why Christianity, why Jesus is the only way. And and instead of being just more patient and talking with them and this sort of thing, I was more reactive. And I see this all the time. This is how our natural kind of state is. You're just kind of reactive, and you just want to kind of just preach at people so you feel better. You're like, oh, here's the truth, and pound it over them, and then you feel better about yourself. But in reality, what we need to do is what's the best thing for that person. And sometimes, being more assertive or something like that, it could be the best thing for that person. But most of the time it's not, given that, our culture, or, our culture today, it's not. And when you're talking to different cultures, it could be. That's important too, because remember that's what we were talking about with Islam and stuff like this. But we'll talk about that another time. But what's even sadder about this is I had another roommate right after him. I moved out, and then again about 6 months after I moved out, he passed away as well. So, that's crazy, right? I had two roommates that passed away, but what's so sad about it is I could have done better, I feel like, you know what I mean? I could have said these things to them so that way they could understand this. And then at that point they could, it's between them and God. But not saying that God didn't give them, some opportunity, but I could have done a better job trying to explain Christianity to them. But to be honest, I was always kind of caught up in a lot of different things at a lot of these times too. I haven't ever been a perfect Christian, right? Yeah, I'm not your best example. Don't look at me and be like, yeah, be like him, right? I haven't been, but by God's grace, in time, I'm continually trying to be someone where, as Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ, right? I'm trying to be somebody that's more worthy of that, So, but anyways, I think that's just what I kind of want to say, is that you don't want to, get to a point where it's too late for somebody that you love and somebody that you care about. And you also don't want to have the regrets of just kind of bashing them over the head with this thing instead of trying to do what's best for them. And the door swings the other way. You don't want to be too passive where you never say anything, right? It's like Christians can either be like cowardly or just obnoxious. And I hope that we can be neither. I hope that we can be normal people who are honest and straightforward, and you can just talk to people and let them know the truth about Christianity without some sort of, kind of self-righteousness. Because I think when I was talking to him, I came more from a point, and I think this happens with insecurity a lot too. If you feel more insecure about your beliefs, then you're going to be a lot more reactive instead of thinking about what's best for the person. So I guess I hope I made it clear why Jesus is the only way, and a lot more could be said about that. But I hope that, given, the short context of the video, that you understand why Jesus is the only way. And if you know someone who just means the world to you and you don't know how to explain to them that Jesus is the only way, then go ahead and share this video with them. I hope that they watch this far in the video and they realize that you wanted them to see this video because they mean so much to you. You love them. And a lot of times we just don't know how to say it without sounding like we're being overbearing or sounding like we're being reactive, because we do genuinely care and love about, we genuinely do love and care about people that are very close to us. And so sometimes that makes the emotions get a lot, harder, and it's harder to talk to those that are close to us. So if you're watching this video and someone shared it with you, then I hope that you understand that the person who shared it with you really does genuinely care about you, even if it's hard to show. But yeah, so, and also I want you to know too, that if the God of Christianity is real, and we have a lot of great reasons to believe he is, I believe he is with all my heart, right? Then he loves you infinitely more than that person does, than anybody does. And he just wants you to accept his offer to pay for the wrongs that you've done. That's it, and I just think that, like, it sounds like a lot of people are just like, they still don't want it. And because a lot of us are scared in some way too, but start there, accept his offer, and then just watch how your life changes. Because it will change. It will change. Something will change in you if you do. And you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know all this theology. You don't have to know all this stuff. You don't have to, have your whole life together, because my life was not together. You know what I mean? But you just have to just accept his offer. That's it. So that's it for my story. I hope you guys got something from it. And if this is your first time here, then make sure you go ahead and subscribe and check out the links in the description. But I'll just go ahead and leave you guys with that. And yeah, God bless you guys. And I pray that, this has touched you in some way. And if you're a first time viewer and someone shared this with you, I just hope that you just consider at least what I said. All right. Talk to you guys later. Peace.